Hiya, welcome to My Compound Life. I'm your host, Jonathan. This is a channel where we build assets, we build habits to manage all of our assets, and most importantly, we build freedom, and that will be financial freedom for all of us. I'm your host, Jonathan. It's good to see you. Before we get started, any chance, even if you don't like my video, even if you don't like me, just hit the like, hit subscribe. I'm a small content creator, as you can see by my number of follower counts. I'm only currently on my 15th followers. Be really thankful if you can be my 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th followers. So hit the like, hit subscribe, and drop me a comment and let me know who you are. Okay, the 16th to the 20th. Look forward to chatting with you guys soon. Okay, so today is the 10th of December. Very important date. Very important date until the next FOMC meeting, right? Because I think everyone's got their eyes on what's going to happen in the US market. From the time of recording now is about 12:30 noon in the UK, in the West Midlands. I think give it another few hours. We shall know the outcome for the FOMC rate cut meeting. So this is a daily Bitcoin video. Let's start with a few hygiene. Bitcoin price right now, at the time of recording, is about 91,800. So around 92,000. Okay. So if we quickly look at the fear and greed index, we are at fear level. Definitely a good sign. I think every one of you guys are extremely happy with the Bitcoin pump from yesterday, right? We are currently at 30 at fear. Yesterday we were at 25. Of course, last week we were around 22 at the extreme fear side of the fear and greed index. So definitely, I think plenty of people are thinking that it will be a very positive and dovish FOMC outcome. And of course, with the expectation of, at least a 25 basis point rate cut by the Fed. So very, very positive so far, right? But I do want to caveat the fact that from multiple Fed rate cut outcome, it usually lead on to a Bitcoin dump as soon as the rate cut being announced. I'm not sure whether that's more of a manipulation or simply retail just do not know how to action post the FOMC announcement, right? So that's why usually there will be a small dump on Bitcoin, and that's of expectation. And of course, let's not forget, I think there's still a CME gap at around 89,000. So very likely, or somehow, the CME gap needs to be filled before we can go any higher, right? So as a recap, I still believe we are in a bearish situation, despite the fact that we have some good price action yesterday leading up onto the FOMC meeting. But I am still seeing, without the fact that we've gone back, hitting back the 50 days moving average, without that, I still see that we are in a bearish, maybe a mini bear situation. Okay, so looking at the Bitcoin monthly return, I think yesterday we were around negative 0.06%, but as of now, today, we are around 1.93 positive for the month of December, right? So let's hope December can continue to gain strength for Bitcoin, and let's hope for a Christmas rally. If that's the case, if we do get a Christmas rally, I think if we can reclaim back the 94,000 USD for Bitcoin, potentially we may get back to the 100K-ish for Bitcoin. Okay, so that's some positive news for all of us today, right? Looking at the ETF inflows and outflow, we've got this week's data for Monday and Tuesday so far. This week we have total inflow of $91 million, right? So compared to last week, it was an outflow of 88 million. So essentially from Tuesday onwards, we have done enough of inflows to override last week's outflow, I guess. So, but having said that, the inflows from ETF, or this institution's ETF, it's still very, very minimal, right? In comparison to some of the bigger weeks inflow, like the week for in just before the Bitcoin crash back in the 10th of October. Each week we were at like 2.7 billion inflow, 3.2 billion inflow, 2.34 billion inflow, compared to now, I mean, the inflows and outflows are just minimal, right? Like today, up until yesterday, for this week, 2 days worth of data, we're only at 91 million, So yeah, I think institutions in terms of buying or retail buying of Bitcoin are everyone's still on the fence. Decision will be made, no doubt, in a couple of hours' time when after the Fed announcement after Fed's announcement, I think somehow 25 basis point rate cut, it's already priced in. But I think it's just more of catching whether the Fed is dovish or hawkish, gonna really set the expectation of the Bitcoin price for the coming few weeks, running up until the end of December. Okay, so let's look at the ETF inflow day by day. For yesterday, I think it was positive for Bitcoin, inflow of $151 million, right? So compared to the day before, Monday, it was outflow of 60 million, okay? And for Ethereum, get rid of the ads. Okay, Ethereum yesterday, Ethereum yesterday again have an inflow of 178 million. The day before was inflow of 35 million. But of course, last week on the Friday, along with the Thursday, it was outflow of 75 million and 41 million respectively. Okay, and of course, looking into Solana, let me refresh, get the data for Solana. Solana yesterday, again, positive inflow of 16.6 million. Okay, so that's all for Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana inflow and outflow. I think retail are regaining some positive sentiment, right? Hence, we can definitely see in the inflows, outflows versus the price action, right? So definitely positive happening, positive momentum in the market. Okay, so a few things about Bitcoin news that I want to cover. I think a few exciting things such as PNC Bank now offers spot Bitcoin access to private clients, right? So PNC is one of the top 10 biggest banks in the US. So now they start to let private banking clients, which are a lot of rich clients, to start buying Bitcoin directly through the bank, right? So before, the process can be quite model up, where you need to think of ways to buy USDT, go to an exchange to buy Bitcoin, or some more advanced, more of the TradFi investor will also have to get access to buy an ETF and so forth, right? However, this time around, investors, especially from the private banking, a lot of money, they don't have to shift the money anywhere else. Essentially, through their own bank, they can start to go in and buy Bitcoin, right? So, who exactly is PNC Bank, and why does it matter for Bitcoin, right? PNC Bank is one of the largest banks in the United States, right? So it is regularly ranked top 10 by total assets, managing around 550 to 600 billion dollars worth of assets, right? So imagine if a small fraction, a small percentage shifts into Bitcoin. I think Bank of America are encouraging that in everyone's portfolio needs to be at least I think, was it 4 to 5% into Bitcoin. So that's the kind of recommendation. So imagine if a small amount starts to shift, and with more banks doing the same, right? So obviously with more banks, they're gonna look at PNC. Hey, they're offering Bitcoin to their clients, and at the same time, Bitcoin being such a good investment return for some of the ETF like BlackRock. Essentially, we're going to see more banks adoption. So think of it as the US equivalent of major UK bank, a little bit like the Lloyds Bank in UK, the NatWest. But certainly, PNC Bank is not as big as the JP Morgan or the Bank of America, right? But still huge enough. It's a national player with millions of customers, right? So do have the expectation that, we are in bearish situation, but this might be a mini bear that we are going through, and with the expectation of more and more adoption in the coming years, right? So not immediately, don't have the expectation that Bitcoin will pump immediately with this announcement, but as long as there are gradual adoptions, I think it's all positive for us as a Bitcoin holder for the long term, right? But I also want to call out why PNC Bitcoin move is such a big deal, right? It's one of the first major US banks to let private banking clients to buy Bitcoin directly through their bank platform, right? So a lot of clients with access to their banking apps. Now these private clients can essentially, just with a touch of a few buttons, right, essentially shift some of that investment into Bitcoin, right? So we can definitely see TradFi and Bitcoin linking up nicely or seamlessly through this type of adoption. So this means more traditional investors, especially the wealthier ones, the corporate clients and high net worth individual and their portfolio, right, can now get exposure without needing traditional exchanges like the Coinbase, the KuCoin, the Binance, etc., right? So it sends a strong signal that Bitcoin is becoming accepted inside mainstream banking TradFi. And of course, a lot more banks will copy each other's, right? Copy the way how things gets activated, etc. And I have the expectation that after PNC announcement, it's gonna get lead into Wells Fargo, Citibank, all offering similar Bitcoin services. And hopefully, if the adoption were highly successful, very likely in the UK very soon, more banks will follow suit, right? Because UK has a new crypto regulation that starts to accept Bitcoin and crypto, while recognizing Bitcoin and crypto as property. Okay, so yes, I think it is still a news that matter because the whole thing legitimize Bitcoin, right? If regulated banks offer BTC, it's no longer fringe, right? It opens up new demand channel, right? Private bank clients tend to invest tens of millions of pounds into Bitcoin now. Okay, it also signals that the US banking system is quietly preparing for a Bitcoin integrated future, right? So overall, I think this news, it sends a bullish signal out. It doesn't have an immediate effect on Bitcoin price because it will take time for the private bank investors to catch on and start purchasing Bitcoin, right? It will take time for them to build up that confidence. However, I think with all of this in place, it does call out manipulation, right? So there has been a lot of social media chat about banking giant manipulating Bitcoin price so that they can onboard more of their TradFi investors. So would this be why there has been so much dumps in terms of Bitcoin in recent few weeks, right? It could be one way to explain it, right? Because there will be more TradFi trying to bring their customers in, and as long as Bitcoin is above 100,000, a lot of investors will be, I'll wait and see, right? I'm not going to immediately invest into Bitcoin at 100,000. However, when Bitcoin is at 85,000, 89,000, or even 80,000 in the earlier few weeks, that's where a lot more of these institutions investors were accumulating Bitcoin. Okay, so take note of that. And of course, there has been some new regulatory changes in the US banks, where US bank regulator says banks can now act as Bitcoin intermediaries, meaning they don't have to keep the Bitcoin, but they can be the intermediaries that help to onboard more customers. So a US regulator confirmed banks can handle crypto transactions. Implications: crypto continues moving into regulated banking system, so that's good. And we, similar to the whole, the PNC bank offering Bitcoin to their private banking clients, I think we will, with such regulatory in place for the US banks, we do anticipate more banks to follow, right? So I think even CZ yesterday said, we are about to enter a bullish Bitcoin. What did he say? I think he said something about super cycle or something like that, right? Of course, let's not get hype out from all of these influencers, right? Until we see Bitcoin reclaiming that 50 days moving average, right? We should continue to remain in our bearish sentiment, right? Bearish sentiment, just so that, if Bitcoin does perform well, yes, time to get out from our swing back. If Bitcoin do falls to, below that 200 days moving average at around 70,000, wow, that would be an opportunity of a lifetime to accumulate for our hodl bag, right? So always be bullish and bearish in Bitcoin, because ultimately we hold a hodl bag as well as a swing bag. So bear that in mind when you go about in managing your Bitcoin. I think there are some, of course, negative news for Bitcoin too. Let's not just, let's not, for me, just communicate all of the bullishness. MSCI is considering blocking crypto-heavy firms from its major indexes. So any companies that hold large Bitcoin reserve could be excluded from key global indexes, right? So implication, of course, this would reduce visibility and attractiveness of BTC treasury firms, right? But having said that, MSCI is from Morgan Stanley, so it may only be restricting onto some of the indexes provided by Morgan Stanley, if that in that case, right? Um, and also, US mining firms, we are also seeing them pivoting towards AI driven center business, right? So I think in terms of the US, Donald Trump, they place so much emphasis in terms of AI. And I think even for a lot of uh, laws, regulations, a lot of these are very pro AI. So it's in a way it's stealing a lot of mind shares away from investors. If they were to invest in terms of blockchain, Bitcoin technology versus AI, it does seem a lot more mind share will be heading towards AI along with the investment. So that's why uh, this is why I think it's also having some implication of US mining firm pivoting towards AI too, right? So large miners are shifting away from Bitcoin mining into AI server hosting. Okay, I think that makes sense because they already have that infrastructure in place, right? So in a way, it is kind of like a extra revenue stream, right? So in a way, it is mix of bullish and bearish. Um, it's not gonna have minor short-term effect. But having said that, it will have that longer-term structural concern when more of the mining firms are pivoting, into AI data center business, which will essentially make Bitcoin a lot more centralized in a way. Okay, and other news, and of course we have other news. UK news. Let's go with some UK news. Crypto UK joined cross-border policy alliance with the US counterparts. So the UK Crypto Association is partnering with a US advocacy organization, right? So Crypto UK is the main industry body representing digital assets firms in the UK, right? So think of it as the crypto industries lobby group in the UK, right? So similar to how banks have the British Bankers Association, and in the UK, we have got Crypto UK, right? So its a member include exchanges, fintech, wallet providers, and blockchain companies in the UK, right? I'm not exactly sure how big this is, but it's always good to have representation because there will be so much tech development, and that needs to have some sort of a government visibility to make it compliant, etc. Right? So it regularly works with the UK Treasury, FCA, and HMRC on policy and regulations. Right? So I wouldn't say it will have any immediate effect, but it is a very important part of uh, of bringing blockchain, uh, fintech, etc. into the UK, right? So now Crypto UK has joined forces with major US policy organization, the Digital Chamber, to coordinate regulations and advocacy across both markets, right? Why it matters? It links two of the world's most important financial jurisdictions, the UK and the US, creating a shared voice of crypto policy, right? So I certainly hope more of the friendly Bitcoin and crypto policies in the US will eventually be adopted in the UK too, right? So I think that's something uh, to look forward to. The industry gets more influence, more credibility, and of course more political weight. So, is this game changing? How relevant is this news right now? Okay, not really. At least instantly, but in the long run, it's not as if this will immediately have an impact onto the Bitcoin price, like the US rate cut, but strategically, yes, because it helps shapes future regulation in the UK, and it sets a stage for harmonized rules. So what we expect to see in the US will eventually be also available in the UK, I'm hoping, right? And of course, it strengthens the idea that Bitcoin and crypto are permanent fixtures in the financial system and not a temporary fads. Okay. Overall, with all of this news, I do felt that we are seeing some institutions' momentum, right? More of the setting up infrastructure, offering Bitcoin to the retails, to the wealthy, and so forth, right? But so far, I'm not seeing too much of the actual buying, even on the ETF, right? Even on the Bitcoin price action, right? So we are seeing that things are getting set up for Bitcoin and crypto, right? For Bitcoin for now, let's just talk about Bitcoin for now. However, the buying itself, it's still not there yet, okay? Of course, headwinds remain because, weaker corporate demand, ETF inflow. We do have more outflows and so forth. I still felt we may still be in a bearish situation so far. Okay, but let me remind all of you, this will hopefully get addressed soon in a few hours' time. Because the macro remains the key driver, right? Not all of this crypto UK news, but the macro remains, right? So Bitcoin price moved up to about 94,500 USD yesterday. It's mainly tied to the expectation of the Fed rate cut. I think in the poly market, it's up to about 96% now for the 25 basis point rate cut. If that cut's confirmed, Bitcoin, I do anticipate to see a short-term boost followed by a fall, right? So I kind of felt we may eventually still drop back down to the high 88,000-ish, just so that we can cover the CME gap. I think for the UK viewers, please remember to hit like and hit subscribe if you're in the UK viewers, also in the US or anywhere else in the world, right? I think for the UK viewers, legal protection, cross-Atlantic policy cooperation is a big confidence boost, right? And to really showcase how policies, governance, etc., are aligning and becoming more Bitcoin and crypto friendly. Especially crypto continues to mature as a recognized asset class. So I think all of these are positive. Okay, so that's it for today. That's it for today's news update, daily Bitcoin update. If you like my content, even if you don't, just hit the like, hit subscribe, help me out, get me to the 20th subscriber. I'll be really thankful. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.